Of course, Ringo Starr truly hated her more than anyone. Ringo Starr was born Richard Starkey on July 7, 1940 in the working-class district of Dingle, Liverpool, England. Rose from humble beginnings to become one of the most beloved figures in the history of popular music. His early life was marked by hardship. Financial struggles plagued his family, while his childhood was plagued by serious health issues. As a young boy, Ringo spent long periods in hospitals recovering from illnesses such as peritonitis and tuberculosis, which kept him away from school and delayed his education. Yet, these difficult experiences shaped his resilient spirit and deep appreciation for life. It was during those long stays in the hospital that he discovered his love for rhythm, often drumming on tables and bedpans and unwittingly setting the foundation for his future as one of the world's most iconic drummers. Before his rise to international stardom, Ringo worked a variety of jobs, including an apprentice joiner and a machine operator in a Liverpool factory. His passion for music, however, could not be suppressed. A lover of skiffle and the early days of rock and roll, he began playing drums with local bands, eventually landing with Rory Storm and the Hurricanes, one of the city's leading outfits at the time. His dynamic drumming style and cheerful personality made him stand out. And by 1962, destiny came calling. When the Beatles' original drummer Pete Best was dismissed, Ringo was invited to join John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and George Harrison, completing that lineup that would change the course of musical history forever. As the drummer of the Beatles, Ringo Starr became known for his steady, reliable beat, his inventive fills, and his unique sense of timing. Though he often stayed in the background, his musical contribution was vital to the band's signature sound. Songs like Ticket to Ride, Rain, and A Day in the Life showcased his ability to enhance melodies with subtle yet powerful rhythm work. Beyond drumming, Ringo's warm personality and comedic charm made him a fan favorite. He also stepped into the spotlight as a singer on several Beatles tracks, including With a Little Help from My Friends, Yellow Submarine, and Octopus's Garden, each of which reflected his approachable, good-natured character and childlike sense of wonder. When the Beatles disbanded in 1970, Ringo Starr refused to fade into the background. Instead, he embarked on a solo career that proved he was far more than just a drummer in a famous band. His debut solo albums, Sentimental Journey, 1970, and Bocuse of Blues, 1970, showed his versatility and deep appreciation for different musical genres, including pop, country, and jazz standards. His 1973 album, Ringo, became a massive success, producing hit singles like Photograph and You're 16, which topped charts around the world. His friendly, relatable style resonated deeply with audiences, and his collaborations with his former Beatles bandmates demonstrated the enduring bond they shared even after the band's breakup. Beyond his music, Ringo Starr developed a successful career in acting and film. He appeared in several movies, including Caveman, 1981, That'll Be the Day, 1973, and The Magic Christian, 1969, alongside Peter Sears. His natural comedic timing and down-to-earth personality made him an appealing presence both on screen and off. In later years, he also became a narrator and voice actor for children's television, most notably lending his voice to the beloved series Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, introducing a new generation of fans to his warm, engaging storytelling. In the decades that followed, Ringo continued to tour and record, performing with his all-star band, a rotating lineup of celebrated musicians from various generations. His concerts became joyous celebrations of music, unity, and friendship, blending Beatles classics with his solo hits and the songs of his bandmates. His influence as a drummer also continued to grow, with countless artists citing him as an inspiration for his precision, musicality, and understated brilliance. In recognition of his contributions to music and culture, Ringo was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II in 2018, officially becoming Sir Richard Starkey, an honor long overdue for a man who helped shape modern popular music. Ringo Starr's romantic life reflects both the turbulence of his years as a world-famous Beatle and the enduring strength of love he found later in life. His two marriages, first to Morin Cox and later to Barbara Bach, represent very different chapters of his personal journey, each marked by distinct emotions, challenges, and personal growth. Ringo's first marriage was to Morin Cox, a Liverpool-born hairdresser who had been a devoted fan of the Beatles before she met him. Their story began in the early 1960s when Beatlemania was exploding across the globe. Morin and Ringo met at the Cavern Club, the famous underground venue where the Beatles honed their craft and built their earliest fan base. Morin was just a teenager when they met, and despite the overwhelming chaos that surrounded the band, their affection for one another grew quickly. Ringo, known for his warmth and humor, was deeply attracted to Morin's grounded nature. Unlike many others drawn to his fame, she saw him as Richard Starkey, the man behind the drums, not just Ringo Starr, the international sensation. The two married on February 11th, 1965 at the height of the Beatles' fame. Their wedding caused a media frenzy as thousands of fans gathered outside the registry office, hoping to catch a glimpse of the newlyweds. Inside, the ceremony was intimate and emotional, attended by close friends and family, including fellow Beatles John Lennon and George Harrison. Morin's loyalty and strength during those years were remarkable. While Ringo toured the world and faced the pressures of superstardom, Morin maintained their home life in England, often shielding him and their growing family from the overwhelming spotlight. The couple went on to have 3 children, Zach, Jason, and Lee Starkey. Zach would later follow in his father's footsteps, becoming a respected drummer in his own right and performing with iconic bands such as The Who and Oasis. However, as the years passed and the Beatles dissolved in 1970, a string of serious strains was put on the couple's marriage. Fame, long separations, and the temptations of the rock and roll lifestyle took a toll. Ringo himself has openly admitted that he struggled during this period as he turned to alcohol and lived a wild, chaotic lifestyle after the Beatles' breakup. Despite Morin's efforts to hold the family together, their relationship became increasingly distant. Their marriage officially ended in 1975, though they remained connected through their children and mutual respect. Tragically, Morin Cox later passed away in 1994 from leukemia at only 48 years old. Her death deeply affected Ringo, who was by her side in her final days. He later said that she had been one of the most genuine and caring people he had ever known, a true part of his life that he would always carry with him. After years of soul-searching and personal transformation, Ringo found love again with Barbara Bach, an actress and model best known for her role as the Bond girl Anna Amisova in the 1977 James Bond film The Spy Who Loved Me. The two met in 1980 on the set of the adventure comedy film Caveman, in which they both starred. Their chemistry was immediate and undeniable. Ringo later described their meeting as love at first sight, saying that Barbara brought calmness, elegance, and emotional stability to his life, a stark contrast to the turbulence of his earlier years. Their relationship blossomed quickly, and they were married on April 27, 1981 in a lavish ceremony at Marylebone Town Hall in London, the same place where Paul McCartney had married Linda Eastman over a decade earlier. Friends, family, and fellow musicians gathered to celebrate the union of two people who had found peace and companionship in one another. Barbara became a major influence in helping Ringo confront his struggles with addiction. In the late 1980s, both Ringo and Barbara entered rehab together, a decision that changed their lives. Ringo often credits Barbara for saving him both emotionally and physically, saying her support and love were instrumental in his journey toward sobriety and stability. Throughout the decades, their marriage has remained one of the most enduring and admired in the entertainment industry. Despite the pressures of fame, Ringo and Barbara have built a quiet and meaningful life together, splitting their time between homes in England, Monaco, and Los Angeles. They are known for their shared interest in humanitarian causes, particularly in support of environmental protection and addiction recovery programs. Barbara and Ringo also share a deep commitment to peace and love, a philosophy which Ringo often expresses through his art and music. Through the years, the Beatles have been regarded as the epitome of musical brotherhood. For young men from Liverpool who changed the world together. Yet behind the fame and unity that captivated millions, tensions often brewed within the band, some of them running deeper than the public ever realized. For Ringo Starr, the quiet Beatle George Harrison was someone he admired, respected, and played alongside through the group's rise to immortality. But over time, personal slights, jealousy, and betrayal began to creep into their relationship, leading Ringo to later admit that he had harbored more anger toward George than anyone else in his life. "George was like a brother to me," Ringo once said. But sometimes brothers fight harder than enemies ever do. Those words carried years of unspoken tension. Though Ringo was often seen as the peacekeeper of the Beatles, his calm exterior concealed frustrations that built up through their years of stardom. Ringo had joined the group last, replacing Pete Best in 1962, and quickly found himself in a whirlwind of fame. George, who had been with John Lennon and Paul McCartney from the very beginning, often treated Ringo like the outsider, not cruelly, but with the subtle superiority of someone who had been there first. George could be distant, Ringo recalled. He had his own world, his own spirituality, and sometimes he made me feel like I didn't belong in it. The tension reached a boiling point during the later Beatles years, when personal egos and creative ambitions began pulling the group apart. George, eager to be recognized for his songwriting, felt overshadowed by Lennon and McCartney. Ringo, meanwhile, struggled to find his place in a band where his musical contributions were often minimized. There were days, Ringo confessed, when I didn't even want to go to the studio. George and I would barely look at each other. I was tired of feeling invisible. All this came alive poignantly during the filming of Let It Be in 1969. Silent glances, short tempers, and moments when Ringo simply walked out, unable to handle the tension. But what truly shattered Ringo's affection for George came later, when personal lives became entangled. Ringo's then wife, Maureen Starkey, was the subject of a brief romantic involvement with George in the early 1970s. Though George was also married at the time to Pattie Boyd, the revelation hit